Let's go ahead and move on to a slightly more complex example. In this one, we rendered a string of HTML, which is acceptable as a return from a page callback. But if instead we supply something called a render array, which is a structured array of that content, then other modules can manipulate it fairly easily by either removing certain parts of it or adding certain parts, or they can reorder the existing parts. So let's go ahead and do an example that uses a render array. Jump back to your module directory and go ahead and open up the second step, which is called render array and tabs. So we're actually taking a look at a couple things here, both the render arrays and how to add a page that displays as a menu tab. Go ahead and copy the entire code and paste it over the existing code in your pages.module file. And scroll up to the top. What we're doing in this new file is adding two items through our hook menu, pages/default and pages/render array. And what we're doing is taking the original page that we defined, the pages path, and then adding the pages/render array to it as an extra tab. So let me show you what this looks like in the browser when we're using tabs. So this is the admin/content page, and we have two tabs here, one for content and one for comments. So when we go to this content page, there's a default tab set to display, and that's this content tab. If we click on comments, we'll see that we're visiting a page that's actually a subset of the original page. So now we're at admin/content/comment. So we're going to do the same kind of thing. We're going to take our original page and we're actually going to add an item to the hook menu that is not an actual page, but just a reference to the parent page. Let me show you how that works. So here with our second item, we're assigning it pages/default. So this is a subpage of our original page. We're giving it a title of string and we're setting a type. But we can assign it additional types to do different things with it. For example, this type will allow you to set the item as a tab and set it as the default tab. So when somebody goes to pages, what they'll see is pages/default. And if we don't assign it a page callback, it will automatically be assigned the parent page callback. So when someone visits pages, what they're actually going to see is this page here, pages/default. But because it's taking on the page callback of its parent, it will then get pushed the pages string function and whatever content gets returned from that. So it's kind of a loop here. It's a little tricky. Once you work through this a couple of times, you'll get it. And then we're assigning a weight of -10. So this will push that tab all the way to the left-hand side every time. If you're curious what types are available to you, you can go to the definition of this constant. I can do that by holding down Command and clicking the constant, and it will jump to the definition, which is right here. This is in the menu.inc file, which is in the Drupal includes directory. And if you scroll around, you'll see that there's a number of constants defined here. And all of them are either a collection of properties or are themselves properties. So in this case, menu default local task, this is a collection of properties. Menu is local task, menu links to parent, and menu visible in breadcrumb. And there's a good bit of comments above each one to help you learn about what each one is supposed to do and why you might want to use them. Okay, I'm going to jump back to our module. Our next item that we're adding to hook menu is pages/render array, and we're giving it a title, a description, and a new page callback called pages render array. We're giving this one access arguments, and if we do this, an access callback will be defined for us, and the default is user access. So up here in our first example, when we set access callback to true, we were saying we want anybody to visit this page. But if we can also set this to a function, and if we don't set this to a function, it will use user access by default, and user access expects a permission to be passed to it. So we're passing it a permission of access content. So anybody who has this permission will be able to view this page. We're giving it a weight of 2, which is lighter than our default task, and so it will display to the right of it. And then we're giving this one a type of menu local task, which will allow it to display as a tab, but it won't be the default tab when somebody visits the pages item. And finally, we are returning the items again. Let's go ahead and scroll down and see our new function for our render array page. So this is what's going to be returned when somebody visits pages/render-array. What we're doing is generating an array, and you'll see that the content is actually very similar to our previous string function. But instead of passing it all as a chunk of HTML, what we're doing is creating an array and assigning keys to it. We're assigning this one a key of string paragraph, and we're giving it a type of markup, which says that this is going to be HTML. And then we're assigning it a markup property, which is the actual HTML that will get rendered. And we're doing the same thing with our second paragraph, but just giving it a new key of render array paragraph. And then we're passing it our item list that's going to be passed to the theme function theme item list. We're passing it items, and notice that we are adding a hashtag to this items key. When we're passing the items array straight to the theme function, we don't need to do this, but when we're passing it through a render array, we need to add this as a property. So we're using the hashtag. And we're using the same array as we did in our previous example. We're passing it a title, but we're also passing it a theme. And we're passing it the theme item list. So when this array gets built, it will look for this theme function, and it will pass whatever other parameters exist in this item to that theme. So at this point, when Drupal asks for this array, it will then go and ask other modules if they have anything to say about this array, if they want to rearrange it or add to it or remove it. And they can access all of these properties directly, which is really nice. And then finally, we're returning the array, and Drupal will handle the rendering process on its own. In order to see our new page in action, what we're going to have to do is tell Drupal to rebuild the menu registry. Drupal caches the menu registry in order to improve performance, so it doesn't have to run through every hook menu on every new page load. Because of this, it means that if we're working with a module and we're adding new pages to it, that we need to rebuild the registry after each one. Not doing so could add a lot of confusion to the process, and most developers do this at least a time or two before they get the hang of clearing the cache. In order to clear the cache, let's jump back to our browser. We can go to Configuration, Development, Performance. And at the very top of the page, there's a Clear All Caches button, and this will, among other things, rebuild our menu registry. I'm going to jump back to our code, and I'm going to go up to our hook menu, and I'm going to copy our new path, pages/render array, and I'm going to paste this into the address bar. Okay. Now we're looking at our page being built through a render array instead of a straight string. And you see it looks very similar. In fact, it's identical. Also, you may notice that we now have tabs on our page. One for string, this is our string example, and one for render array. Now when we're on this tab, the URL is pages/render array. And if we click on string, instead of this taking us to pages/default, which was the registered path, it instead takes us to /pages, which is what the default menu item task will give us. It will default to the parent item in terms of path.